OK, let's move on, because on this coming Tuesday, Atheist Ireland will be sitting down with Enda Kenny. It's the first time a Taoiseach of the day has met an atheist advocacy group. Joining us to discuss this meeting is Atheist Ireland Chairman Michael Nugent. Michael, thanks indeed for coming into us. What's going to be on the agenda on Tuesday when you meet with Enda Kenny?
Well, there's a range of things. The main thing is that Ireland is breaching the human rights of atheists and indeed minority faith members. Has been told repeatedly that it's breaching those human rights by the United Nations Human Rights Committee. We have the same rights to freedom of conscience, equality before the law, freedom from discrimination as religious groups do. And since back when the Lisbon Treaty found that governments should treat non-religious philosophical groups in the same way as religious groups, the regular meetings that the governments have been having with religions for years, mostly the Catholic Church, have to be extended now to non-religious groups. So this will be the first time on Tuesday that we'll be meeting the Taoiseach.
Why do you say that Ireland is discriminating against non-believers or atheists?
Well, our constitution, for a start, has a range of clauses in it. The President and judges and members of the Council of State, which include Taoiseach and Taoiseach, who have to be on the Council of State, they can't not be on it, have to swear religious oaths, which means that a conscientious atheist effectively can't aspire to holding those high offices. Our education system, 90% of the primary schools are run by the Catholic Church with a religious ethos that's integrated throughout the whole curriculum. And so even though the state pays for the system, it's done religiously, and you can't even exercise your constitutional right to opt your child out from religious education because it's permeated throughout the entire curriculum. We have equality laws that give explicit exemptions to religious organisations such as schools and hospitals to discriminate on the grounds of religion in a way that no other organisation is allowed to do so. And when they claim to be trying to fix that, for example, they're saying, they're changing the law that allows them to discriminate against atheist teachers to say you can't use that to discriminate against gay teachers. But that isn't the problem. I mean, obviously it's great that they're not going to be able to discriminate against gay teachers, but if you had a law allowing people to discriminate against travellers, and they say, well, we'll amend it so that you can't discriminate against gay travellers, people would immediately realise that's not an appropriate response to that problem.
You mentioned the Council of State, but we have had members of the Council of State who are atheists.
We have, and I'm sure we've had judges that are atheist, but the issue is how they square that with their conscience. I mean, I as an atheist, if I'm swearing an oath, I will swear it and mean it, wouldn't be in a position to swear that I believe in a God that I don't believe in. If other people are capable of doing that, that's up to them. But the United Nations Human Rights Committee has told Ireland that breaches the human rights of atheists, and indeed there was a case in the European Court of Human Rights in Greece to do with oaths in court that found that even by giving alternative oaths, you're breaching the right to freedom of conscience, because you're forcing people to reveal their religious or non-religious beliefs, even indirectly. That there's a range of human rights laws that have been developing over the years that are way out of line with the way Ireland operates.
Okay, but I don't want to get too bogged down at this point, but I mean, how do you get around that? I mean, presumably you need to swear some kind of allegiance, oath of allegiance. It doesn't have to be a religious one, but to serve on the Council of State. I mean, if you're saying that people don't even want to reveal that they believe or not in God, is that not stretching things a little bit?
No, because it's nothing to do with God. It's the Council of State. It's a state of a republic. You should give allegiance to the state of which you're serving, and not to either religion or atheism. We would be as opposed to a state that forced people to declare allegiance to atheism as we are to ones that would force people to declare allegiance to religion.
Blasphemy obviously is a big issue. You were in with the Department of Justice, I think, last week discussing our blasphemy laws. That's not likely to change anytime soon. I mean, I think a lot of people are surprised that the government didn't take up the opportunity to have, when they're having the referendum on same-sex marriage, not to have a referendum on our blasphemy laws. Then instead they chose, for reasons that are not quite clear, to have one on the age you can become president on. You're obviously disappointed in that.
We are, yeah. And by the way, just as an aside, on the age of the presidency one, there's another example of discrimination against atheists. They had an opportunity there to change the oath, but instead they're extending the number of religious people that can become president and increasing the number of atheists that can't. But with regard to the blasphemy,
you can't, if it's successful, you can be 21 and president, but
you can be a 21-year-old Christian president, but not a 21-year-old atheist president. Right. But with regard regard to the blasphemy law, yeah, I mean, obviously they should have got rid of it. It shouldn't be there. It's there because we've an anachronistic clause in the Constitution of 1937. They've had various opportunities to remove it, and they could take the opportunity to remove it now. The reason that they're saying that it's being delayed is they're examining various options for replacing it with either, on the negative side, a clause about incitement to religious hatred, or on the positive side, a clause about freedom of expression based on the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, whichever they go for, that could take time. But what we will be suggesting to Enda Kenny is that they could divide that in two. They could have one referendum just to remove it, and another referendum to include whatever else they want to include that isn't actually a blasphemy law. That is
although it would seem to make more sense to do the two in one, wouldn't it?
It would if you had unlimited time and if it wasn't a matter of urgency. But unfortunately, at the United Nations, the Islamic states who have been trying to spread their blasphemy laws around the world, where people are executed for blasphemy, have been citing the wording of the Irish blasphemy law as best practice for what they're trying to do internationally. And so we're in a position now where our law is being indirectly used to support serious infringements of human rights in Pakistan and other countries.
They may well be doing that. I don't doubt what you're saying, but they're probably not right in that. I mean, in the practical impact of our laws, I mean, I was just having a look at it before you came in. It's actually quite difficult to bring a prosecution for blasphemy in this country.
Well, it is, yeah, but what part of the reason for that is that media outlets are reluctant to do something that might be considered blasphemous. You know, there's been a lot of kind of soft self-censorship that we're aware of particularly local media who don't have big legal teams or vast resources, just choosing not to publish stuff on the basis that somebody might be offended in case they run foul of the blasphemy law.
There are defence though. All you need to do is prove a reasonable person would find genuine literary, artistic, political, scientific or academic value in any piece you publish. That seems to make it, that sets the bar pretty high. I mean, it should be easy to come up with that, wouldn't it?
Well, in principle it should, but look, when you put theological things into a constitution or laws, you just end up with all sorts of messes. Nobody would have thought, in fact nobody did think when the pro-life referendum was passed, that it would be used for the state to take an injunction against a raped teenage girl to stop her from travelling to England. This is the difficulty with putting these theological concepts into law. You never know when somebody is going to decide that their conscience is telling them that they have to implement it. Incitement
to religious hatred, and the government suggesting they're looking to replace blasphemy with that. Do you have a problem with that?
Well, we already have laws against incitement to hatred on the grounds of various things, including race, religion, membership of the travelling community, gender, etc. Now, I don't see any reason why we should take any one of those and put that into the Constitution ahead of the others. Equally, if you put a list into the Constitution, then if you were to change the law, do you have to change the Constitution again? These are really matters that are best dealt with by law rather than put into the Constitution.
It strikes me though, I mean, it is about finding a balance. I mean, look, nobody wants to go back to the days where the life of, we were talking earlier on, the life of Brian was banned, but I mean, should it be open season? Should you be able to say exactly what you want about anybody's religious beliefs? And
yes, you should. I think the balance is that you have rights, your beliefs don't have rights. We should have laws that protect people from harm. We should have laws that protect people from other people inciting people to commit actual harm or violence or crimes against them. But we shouldn't have laws preventing expressions of opinion about ideas. Ideas should always be open to criticism, including ridicule if people want to use ridicule, because that's how we advance knowledge, is by always holding ideas open to the most robust debate that people choose to use.
No holds barred?
No holds barred with regard to ideas. Yes, holds when you're talking about people.
Okay. I have to ask you about this Stephen Fry controversy and his comments on that. Is it The Meaning of Life, I think is the programme on RTE. Caused a big story. I mean, technically, could he be prosecuted for, it's not going to happen obviously, but could he be prosecuted for blasphemy under our blasphemy laws?
Well, like the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, it certainly met the first test of our blasphemy laws, which is that it's grossly offensive and abusive in relation to matters held sacred by a religion. The second test is whether people are outraged.
Well, no, the intention to cause outrage.
Well, no, the third test is the intention to cause outrage. The second test is that it causes outrage.
Okay. And definitely causes outrage.
Yeah, so then this is one of the anomalies of it. Technically speaking, that the Director of Public Prosecutions or the Attorney General should be investigating that if there is evidence that the first couple of tests have been met. Now, whether they're doing it or not, who knows? But technically, you're right, it does seem to be.
On I was going to say theological basis, but maybe that's not the word. Maybe it's the opposite. I mean, do you agree with I mean, I know you agree with his views on atheism, but do you agree with the argument he made? It struck me as a slightly juvenile argument, if you like, that because there's pain in the world that God must be a really nasty person?
Well, no, it's far from juvenile. I mean, he started off, if you recall, by saying this is theodicy, and theodicy is the philosophical position of examining the problem of evil, if there is a good God. I mean, it's a philosophical position that has been examined for centuries. If you take not only human evil in the world, but if you take earthquakes, tsunamis, if you take all of these sort of things, they seem very incompatible with an all-powerful, all-good God. If you take the specific stories that people make up about gods, if you take, say, the Christian story, the story of the Old Testament is that this God tells one tribe that if they obey his rules, that he'll help them kill other people and take their land. I mean, the whole story is immoral. It's based on the type of moral thinking that people had, in Bronze and Iron Ages.
Most Christians, though, would take the Old Testament now with a grain of salt, in fairness.
Well, they would claim to, but then they would also claim that they followed the Ten Commandments, which come out of the same part of the Bible as those stories.
Okay. You're meeting the Taoiseach on Tuesday. I don't know if did you see the Taoiseach's own interview on the meaning of life? He came up with he was asked about his own belief, and I think he spoke about an energy and a force that was out there. A lot of people in Ireland coming of that view as well, saying, well, God is a force or something there, but I can't quite define what it is. Would you have time for that kind of viewpoint?
Well, I think that type of wording, you should use a different word for it. It's not the God that people are talking about. When people are talking about God, what they normally mean is some conscious entity that deliberately created the universe and that has a special relationship with human beings on planet Earth, out of 100 billion galaxies, each of which has 100 billion stars like our sun. They believe that all of this was created for the benefit of human beings on planet Earth, which seems a little not so humble from an atheist perspective looking at it.
Okay, I hope, by the way, my shorthand for the Taoiseach's interview with Gay Byrne is actually doing him justice. My apologies if it isn't. Michael Nugent, Atheist Ireland, who's meeting the Taoiseach on Tuesday, thanks indeed for coming into us. Stay with us on the Sunday show. Kanye West is coming up next.